Hi everybody, I'm Sam, and today I'm going to show you how to do the motorcycle sleeve pack for the coffee and tea cardigan. It also works for the fit pants. This is my first video, and it's really weird to watch yourself while you're making a video, but such is life, right? Welcome to the new age of technology. So, I've got two different ways that you can create this motorcycle patch. There's with a cover stitch machine, which gets these really cool tunneling ribs. And then with your serger, you're going to use the rolled hem feature to create these. The cool thing with this option is you can do a contrasting color that goes with your overall pattern, and it can be kind of like a pop of fun. So let's get started. First, what you want to do is decide where you want your patch to be. Do you want your patch to be on the elbow? Do you want it to be on the thigh of your pants? You know, you want a bicep, do you want lower sleeve? The world is your oyster. I also thought it'd be really cool if you did the pocket. So this is my version. I did the long tee, and I did it on the elbow. And then I did my daughter's mine's with the cover stitch. I don't know how well you can see that. And hers is with the rolled hem on the serger. So it's really fun, and she liked it. So first you want to decide where you want it to be. I did the elbow, so those are the instructions I'm going to give you. So with the elbow, what you first want to decide is how big you want your patch. I did 6 inches on the girls. Here's the girls. And I did 7 inches on the women's. In hindsight, after having made them, I would probably shrink that a little bit, maybe 4 inches on the girls, 5 inches on the women's. But again, it's totally an aesthetic thing and what your preference is and what you like. You could do a couple of skinny, like you could do like a skinny one on top and a skinny one on below your knee or below your elbow if you wanted. So decide that first. I wanted the elbow, and I wanted 6 inches, so I took a measuring tape and I measured from my shoulder to my elbow point. And then I took that measurement to my pattern, and this is the girls, and I measured accommodating for seam allowance. You want to measure from there to that point on the center of your sleeve pattern piece. So that's what I did. I just marked a little dot for my elbow. Then I took my ruler and I measured 3.5 inches up from it and 3.5 inches down from it. And then again, I took my ruler and I drew a straight line, and I used the short sleeve line as a guide with my clear, beautiful ruler so that my angle would be right. Okay, so now you have your patch. I'll show you. This is the lower part of the sleeve. You have your top line and your bottom line, and this is going to be your patch piece. So you have two options at this point. You can trace this middle piece and do it as a patch, which is what I did. So underneath this oatmeal colored French terry is more of this beautiful mauve French terry. So I did it right over the top. You can also do it as a part of the sleeve, so it's integrated in. If you do that, what you're going to want to do is retrace your sleeve, the 3 pieces. So you've got your top, your middle, and your bottom. Okay, but you want to add in your seam allowance. So with the coffee and tea cardigan, it's 1/4 inch. So you want to add that to the bottom of your top piece where the curve is for your arm side, and then on the top and the bottom of your patch, and then just on the top of your lower piece. And that's so when you sew it in, you don't end up, oh, what would that be? Like 1 inch shorter than you want to be, because that will also set off where your patch is on your sleeve. So I just did it as a patch. Dun, dun, dun. So I did it for the girls and the boys, or the girls and the women's, and I cut it out. Now you're going to want to cut out a piece of your fabric. So we've got our girls. This is our girls patch piece, right? And I'm going to cut out a piece of fabric that is at least 1 inch bigger all the way around than my pattern piece. And you see it's bigger. Why this is? Well, when you serge it or you cover stitch it or twin needle it, it's going to shrink it. It's not a lot of shrinkage, but it's some shrinkage. Also, from side to side, you know, when you first get started, it's a little wonky. You can't start the cover stitch or the twin needle right at the edge of your fabric, so you want to start in a little bit. So this makes it so you can put it right in the center where all your really pretty pin tucking is, because as a side note, that's what it's called, pin tucking. That's what we're doing. We're pin tucking a piece so that it looks like that cool motorcycle vibe that is really popular right now. So we've cut our piece bigger than our pattern piece, and now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it on the serger first, and then I'll show you on the cover stitch. So here we go. Of course my button doesn't want to work because I didn't turn it on. It's really important to turn things on before you use them. Okay, so here we are with my serger. This isn't normally where it sits, but that darn light, that sun is so stinking bright where we live that it's hard to see if I put it back where it was. So what we're going to do for the serger is you're going to adjust to a 3-thread, don't need this one, rolled hem. So check your manual. It involves moving your stitch finger, which sounds scary, but it's not. It involves changing your foot out. I have a blind hem foot on here. That's not entirely necessary, but the edge of the blind hem foot makes it really easy to keep the fabric lined up so that you don't go too far over and end up with this nub of fabric at the end and not pretty stitching. Then what you're going to want to do is adjust your settings. My right needle, because we don't have a left needle anymore, my right needle is at about 4.5, depends on the weight of your fabric. My upper looper is at 5 and my lower looper is at 5. Then I change the differential feed, that's this one, up to 2. My stitch length is at 3 and my stitch width is at 5. And important, I disengage my knife. So you may need to fiddle with those just a little bit because every fabric is different. I did this oatmeal at those settings. It was great. When I went to do this lighter weight rayon French terry, it kind of puckered, so I had to loosen my tension a little bit on all of my settings up here so that it would lay nicely. I then mark my fabric. You can't even see that. I use that purple disappearing ink pen. I love it. I marked it every inch. You can go every 1/2 inch, you could go every 1.5 inches. It's totally up to you and how frequently you want your pin tucks to appear. And then, and what I think is really important, I'm not going to do it right now for the sake of time, you're going to press it. So you fold wrong sides together because you want those stitches on the right side of your fabric. I'm going to stick it under your presser foot. And you're going to go. You are not going to pull your fabric. It will make you sad inside and you will have to start over. So I'm just going to run that through my machine. Clip a decently long tail. Oops, missed a section. And there you have it, ladies and possibly gentlemen. You can't see it super great because of the light, but this row of pin tucking. We're going to press it afterwards, so if it's a little snug, you can smooth that out when you do the pressing. So yeah, there we have it. All right, now we have my cover stitch machine over here now, and we are going to do the faux pin tucking with our cover stitch machine. You can also use a twin needle, which looks like that. You can use a twin needle on your sewing machine and the principle is the same. You're increasing your tension to create tunneling on your piece. So my tension is up to a 5. If you're using a sewing machine, or depending on the thickness of your fabric, you might want to play with that. So double check that that's going to work to get the tunneling effect that you want, which normally we don't want tunneling, but today we do. I marked the first row with that erasable, or the disappearing ink, so that the first row is nice and straight on your piece. If the first row is not nice and straight, then none of the other rows will be nice and straight, and nobody wants a wonky patch. But maybe you do, and you want to fiddle around with that and see what else you can create. So after you have the first row in, I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot up against the edge of the row that I did as my guide. You can also mark these further apart if you'd like. This is what it ends up, that's how close it ends up together if you use the edge of your presser foot. If you want to do it wider apart, then measure 1 inch or 1.5 inches and use those markings as a guide. You're going to start about 1/2 inch or so in. You don't want to start too close to the edge or it'll suck your fabric down, and that makes nobody happy. Nobody wants to pull fabric back out of their machine and fight with it. So you're just going to lower your needles and then follow that guide of the previous tunneling till you get about 1/2 inch or so from the edge, and then you do the funky chicken dance to get your thread out of this machine. I have a brother. These are my super awesome tweezers that work really good to get under there. And there you have it. You want to leave nice long tails. You don't want to cut those. You want to pull them to the side as you're doing the next rows so that you don't catch them, because that's kind of a pain. And then once you're completely done and all of your pin tucking is done, you want to stretch it just a little bit. That helps it regain some of its stretchability and pulls the lure looper thread in more. And yeah, and that's great. And then it won't be as risky that it will start to come unraveled when you cut out your pattern piece, which is what we will do next. Now we bring it all together. So for our last section, you're going to take the piece that you've pin tucked and lay it out, either with you pin tucked with your serger or your cover stitch or your twin needle, or maybe you left it unpin tucked and you just want a color block section, and this is what you would do for that too. You're going to lay your pattern piece on top of it and cut it out. You want to make sure that you leave a little bit above a pin tuck on the top and on the bottom, so you've got somewhere to top stitch, so you can apply it to your sleeve. Unless you are doing it as a piece of the sleeve, and then this is the point where you would serge those 3 sections of your sleeve together and then treat it the same way you would treat it in the pattern, the way that it's written on the Annelaine pattern. If you're top stitching, you can use the chain stitch on the cover stitch machine, which is what I did, or you can use a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, so the lightning bolt, the zigzag, or a narrow, the lightning bolt, the triple stitch, or a narrow zigzag, whichever is your preference. So here on my daughter's, I was about 1/4 inch away from the edge, and on mine, I did it about 1/8 inch. You can also fold it under and top stitch if you want a more finished look, but I kind of liked that raw edge that you get. So you'll lay your cutout pattern piece on top of your full sleeve, top stitch it down, and you're ready to go. You are ready to sew your entire cardigan together. The only tip I would give you is after you've cut out your pattern piece, don't handle it a whole lot. Like if you're not going to sew right away, then wait until just before you're going to assemble your entire cardigan. Just in case, if you handle especially the cover stitch one or the twin needle one too much, the back thread might start to come unraveled, and you want to be able to catch the edges of it in your seam allowance, and that will help it stay secure. So one other thing is, if you are between sizes, I'm a 10 to a 12, and I made a 10 out of this, so my sleeve's a little more snug. I like it that way. But if you don't want the sleeve very snug, then make sure you go with the higher number, because it does take away some of the stretchability. So that's pretty much it. You're just going to assemble your cardigan now like you normally would, and you'll end up with this super cute accent piece that's way fun. You can do it on the fit pants too, so you can go to Mama Can Do It to get the fit pants, or to the Annelaine to get the coffee and tea cardigan. She has 4 different options. It's a super cute pattern, and you can put this motorcycle patch anywhere you want. This like layer of pin tucking. If you do sew it together and you notice that your needles are skipping out, you need to go up to thicker needles. So happy sewing. Post if you have questions.